Welcome to the Vegan Gym podcast. I am Dr. Daphne Bascom, and I am your host for a very special interview with an amazing cardiologist that I'm sure all of you are aware of. Today, I am honored to welcome Dr. Columbus Batiste to the Vegan Gym podcast. Dr. Batiste, welcome to the Vegan Gym.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice to be here.
Thanks. Thank you for making the travels across the U.S. to join us at our Vegan Superhero Academy retreat.
Well, I started to run and do a little marathon to get here, but I thought better of it and decided to fly.
Well, we appreciate it. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity for you to share a lot of what you've been doing. And I'd like to today have a conversation that maybe is a little different. I've had a great chance to read your book. Thank you. And have listened to a lot of interviews where you've been talking about selfish and the principles. But I would love for you to start, for many of our community who may not know you, our journeys are similar in that they started based on pain.
Yes.
And the pain that brought us to wisdom. Can you share a little bit about how you became the Healthy Heart Doc?
Yeah. No, well, first, thank you so much for having me once again. And I'll tell you, when I look back in time, if I could change the past and not be here, I would do that.
Yeah.
Right. And when I look back at my journey, kind of growing up, I was the youngest. I was the pleasant surprise, as I like to say, amongst 5 kids. And, my dad used to always say to me, are you going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher? What are you going to do when you grow up? And my mom always wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to be a doctor when he was young, and opportunity didn't present itself for them to follow that path, that journey in life. And I was interested genuinely. So when I became a physician, it felt like receiving that diploma was their diploma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I actually made them a diploma because I felt it was theirs and all that they did to support me. But I'll tell you that simultaneously, I grew up watching my dad with needles. Now, not drug abuse needles, but needles still provided by drug companies in terms of insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And he was diabetic my whole entire life. And I'll tell you, after coming out of medical school and training, all of a sudden I saw my dad was a shell of himself.
Mm-hmm.
That all of a sudden now he was at a phase of life where he was dependent. His health span had ended. He was still alive, but his health span had ended. And, I watched him really kind of spiral down over the next ensuing years. And that was rough. And I'll tell you, we actually just passed the anniversary of his passing on August 12th. And I'll tell you, at that time, I'll never forget, I felt horrible this past year, as a matter of fact, because I forgot on August 12th.
Oh, wow.
For the first time, I was working and I forgot. And you know what reminded me was that it was my brother-in-law's anniversary. Mm-hmm. And so when I going back in time, I was scheduled to fly out of the country, or out of state to my brother-in-law's wedding. Mm-hmm. And I stopped by my dad's house, my mom and dad's house, as I always would, to feed him breakfast and to see him. And I saw that look.
Yeah,
I saw that look in his eye, and I went to pieces, like my mom would say. As a grown man, interventional cardiologist, went to pieces. She had to tell me, move away because I was disturbing him. Mm-hmm. And I stayed, I canceled the trip in that moment, and I stayed there. And I'll tell you what's so remarkable about that time was that all of my siblings, without anyone calling, because I didn't know for sure, mm-hmm. all had decided to come to the house that particular day. And we were there when my dad passed away.
That's amazing.
And I'll never, ever forget just that moment in time watching when he was taken out the house. And once again, I went to pieces, and my sister's telling me, you're going to have to be one of carry on the flag. And I remember saying, I don't want to hear that. That was a life-changing moment for me. For at that point, for years, I had individuals who would tell me, Doc, thank you so much for saving my life. Oh, thank you for helping my loved one, this and that and the other. And all those words of affirmation came back as just like daggers of what I was unable to do for my own family. And so that was a moment. That was a moment in time for me. And that could have led to a moment of spiraling despair, to be honest with you, with the way that I felt, a level of guilt, a level of responsibility. My conscious mind knows that you weren't responsible
Mm-hmm.
for it, but that inner child
Yes.
was like, this is my parent. I have these tools. What didn't I have that could have changed the course and trajectory? And so it was something else. It was something else. And so that moment didn't happen immediately, but I began to search and began to look, and the seeds of resiliency, as I like to say, that were planted throughout my childhood growing up, they took root. And I started looking for answers beyond just the pills and the
Mm-hmm.
procedures and so forth, and what my medical knowledge had limited me to that point in time. And that's when I really began to stumble into the largest component, the central component, which is the power of nutrition. And that power of nutrition just started to give me hope. And it started to, and guilt at the same time of, why didn't I know this? Why did I know it to the level where I could apply it? And that's the crazy part, was that it wasn't as if my dad didn't know it. My dad owned a health food store that he had to actually close down because I was a pleasant surprise once again. So, he had to close a health food store called Nature's Garden.
Uh-huh.
And he and my mom ran it, and they had juicing and different things that were there. But my dad, this is what resonated most inside of Cobble Esselstyn's book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. One of the books I stumbled on, many. Joel Furman's books,
Yep.
Eat to Live, Dr. Dean Ornish's book as well. I began to read these books, and then not just read the books, read the literature associated with it, and start to review, look at the works of the life of Pritikin, Nathan Pritikin,
Mm-hmm.
start to really dig into the work he did in the VA, the veteran system, to as well looking at the reversal and the power of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Complete holistic lifestyle. And so as I stumbled on all these things, but Dr. Esselstyn's book rang home because he had a chapter that said moderation kills.
Moderation kills.
Moderation kills. And I will tell you, Daphne, that chapter seemed as if it was written to me and my father, because my dad didn't smoke.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't drink.
Mm-hmm.
If you looked at him, you say he's pretty healthy. If you looked at what he ate, you say, oh, he eats pretty well.
In moderation.
In moderation. That he doesn't eat a bunch of meat, except for that which his doctors recommended he eat. Right? That moved him that direction. And so he didn't do those things. And so you'd say, well, how did this happen to someone like this? Because we never know just the finite amount. And you and I know, we've prescribed medications to patients.
What's the dose?
And that small dose for some patients can be enough to be detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
Other patients can have a large dose and say, Doc, I need more, or something's not working with me. And that's what I saw with my dad as it relates to food. That's what I saw with my dad as it relates to perhaps some of the sleepless nights. I mean, I inherited his mindset for having 1,000 ideas and working on so many different things at once. But it's that focus is so important, that taking time aside. So this was the foundation of really the transformation in my practice, in my life, as I became aware of this and I began to search. And I started off really deciding, and I was afraid, to be honest with you. This was preceded the days of Dr. Kim Williams, of others, and this
nutrition
movement.
Stuff.
Yeah. Right. There was no this strong food as medicine. Yeah. There was no Plantrition Project. Right. There was no vegan superheroes, none of this stuff. Right. So I remember just like, should I say it or not? And I said to myself, Columbus, what are you saying? Of course you have to say it. And I remember this moment in time that I committed to doing it and telling my patients, I didn't have an elevator pitch. I didn't have the full breadth of knowledge. For those of you out there listening saying, I don't know enough to kind of get started or to tell anyone else. I literally just told the first 3 patients who came to my clinic that particular day, you have to eat better. And they looked at me. I gave them the names of a couple of books and said, I want to see you do better. This is important for your longevity. Nothing major. That was it. I didn't break down science. I didn't have any clever quips. It was meant to be. Those 3 patients came back to me. I never forget one of my colleagues who hired me, the former chief. He said, Columbus, I'm not sure what you told my patient, but he's doing amazing. This food stuff, I guess, works. And I was like, what did I say? I had another patient where he was coming in with chest pain and couldn't walk 100 feet, right? They came back and all of a sudden he was like, I feel better.
New man.
I'm like, well, what did you do? He said, I listened to this one doctor who told me to read these books.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the transformation in my practice, that moment right there, that I knew I had to take a different trajectory. I needed to deliver a holistic, complete prescription to my patients for their health. That was the beginning.
Wow. That's a powerful beginning, because I don't think people understand that chapter in Dr. Esselstyn's book, moderation. We all think we can do things in moderation.
Yes.
A little bit won't hurt.
Yes.
But to your point, the dose makes the poison.
It does.
And in your physiology, how it interacts with all of the other elements of your holistic lifestyle, your movement, your sleep, your stress, your social connection, your exposure to toxins in your environment, that all interacts together in a way that I don't think we understand.
That's right. That's right.
But your step forward was, and this is probably, I don't know how it coincides with when I first became aware of you, because I think I was one of the early listeners to the Slave Food Project. I remember probably,
you, by the way.
Right. I think I remember your very first episode.
Oh, really? Okay.
And 100% different than it is today.
Yes.
But the two of you just captivated me, because I felt the same way. Why didn't I know this?
Yes.
And why aren't we able to articulate this to more people so that they too can be empowered to take action? I don't know the context in which your father's health may have been related to some historical injustices or, just general challenges with health equity. But how did that moment also translate into your focus on bringing equitable care and access to this knowledge to a broader swath of people?
Yeah, no, thank you, one, for bringing up those early moments there. And I missed that. That was a very engaging and thought-provoking conversations we would have. And I think both of our schedules, for those of you out there who hadn't seen it, it's called the Slave Food Project, a double entendre, as we like to describe it, where many individuals around the United States are enslaved to their environment, meaning they think this is all that we're aware of, all that we have access to. And then also how the food truly can enslave us. And you can call that addiction. You can call it that bliss factor, all these different things that play a role. And so for me, growing up, we weren't rich, we weren't poor, but we had just enough. So you didn't realize what you didn't have.
Yes.
As much.
I know the feeling.
Right. Yeah. And so I'll remember as a child going with my dad, and there was pre-seated iPhones and TVs in your room and Instacart, all this other business like that. So I just wanted to get out the house. So I loved driving, going with my dad to the grocery store.
Yeah.
So I grew up inside of South Central Los Angeles in Compton. And I remember that going with my dad, we would drive about 25, 30 miles to the grocery store.
Okay.
And I remember
a good grocery store,
a big, beautiful grocery store. So as opposed to what was in my neighborhood, where the fruits looked, just everything was dim and dingy and dirty and overpriced, we would go to this grocery store, and I tell you, it looked like if I was walking into the Garden of Eden. The doors would open up, the lights were bright, the fruit were all just standing, were stacked up so beautifully, the vegetables all there, and we would just go around. I remember that. And it wasn't until I got older that I began to realize that that's because I lived inside an area that was food insecure. Right. A food apartheid state, a food desert that was there. And my dad had the means to drive us out where many of my neighbors didn't.
Couldn't do it.
They were sequestered, that all they could have was an early version of Instacart called the ice cream truck.
Right.
That's
a good way to put it. I remember the ice cream. The early version of Instacart.
Yes.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yes. Yeah. And that sound when they were coming, the ice cream man, and you run out there and
there's that dopamine.
That's right. That push, right? And you get happy just hearing it.
Blocks away. Run inside to get your change from mom.
Right. That's right. That's right. And so it was amazing really at that time. So nevertheless, when I saw all of that, my dad grew up in that environment. He grew up inside of Louisiana, and coming and making do. And so as I began to share the story with individuals, I realized that the message, although powerful, needed to be tailored to individuals, irrespective of where their background was from. And that there are many conflicting issues that come into play. When you tell someone just eat healthy, what does that mean?
Right.
Do I have access to it?
Right.
Can I do it? Is my environment conducive? Right. And so having to really address those issues, because if I tell you something without addressing all the surrounding circumstances, it comes across as elitist. It comes across as if I don't have awareness of what you're suffering. And that's when I began to really dig into, and that's why we developed the messaging as we did, preceding all of the turmoil that occurred inside of the United States and so forth. We began going around and speaking really about this because it's applicable to many communities of color. And to be honest with you, it's a financial strata that many people, irrespective of how you appear on the outside, are subjugated because of financial issues that are there in the lower rungs of society, and they still succumb to the same issues, just at different levels. So,
and that persists today.
Yes, absolutely.
So with that transition and with your, as you wed that understanding that food is medicine, and not just food is medicine, that all of the foundational principles you just shared, do you have safe spaces to walk?
Yes.
Do you, what are those stressors in your life?
Yes.
And do the stresses drive you to the desserts, as you would say in your book?
That's right.
How did you start to take a more concerted effort at educating the community? And that's all communities. Because you see, as an interventional cardiologist, everyone who walks in your door is probably there because they've been diagnosed with something, some chronic disease that most likely is secondary to their lifestyle. The fact that your first 3 patients actually took to heart what you said is a blessing, because had it been had none of them done it, you probably would not be where you are today.
That's correct.
But now how do you take those 3 and make it 3 million?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I'll tell you, part of the story I didn't tell, probably the most interesting, and still it gives me a little bit of chills to this day, is that shortly after seeing those 3 patients, within several months, I received a phone call and saying, "Is this Columbus?" I said, "Yes." "This is S." I said, "S who?" "This is Caldwell Esselstyn," and called me to encourage me that he had heard from others who knew him within my organization about some of the work I was starting and my interest in there. Not only did I receive a phone call from him, I received a phone call from Hans Steele, who recently passed away. All lending support, all lending their resources, all encouraging me to saying that there is a great purpose that I have, that they see in me. And I'll tell you, those seeds that were planted of encouragement were so powerful. So as I saw those individuals, I then decided to start doing lectures. And I called it the missing link, right? The bridge between interventional cardiology and complete health. And started having patients come. And I used my volunteer time. And then all of a sudden, doctors started coming and pharmacists started coming. And then I realized quickly that they understood the why, but the how was still elusive. So then we just started to develop a cooking class. And I had hired at that point a dietitian to be inside the department, so we would actually be able to have patients go immediately over from our office into her office and see them and follow up. And so decided to have a spin on where I do procedures, which is called the cardiac catheterization lab. We call that cath lab.
Right.
And so this was our cath lab, cooking alternative to health. And we put these sessions on. They were very well received. And so as that began to increase, I was encouraged by other individuals inside the movement, likes of Chef AJ, saying, your voice needs to be heard. You need to get out and start doing talks. And I started branching out, starting to give talks a bit more, and locally in churches and communities that were really in need. I'll tell you, when people are thirsty, they're hungry for something. They're hungry and they're thirsty for change. And it was so well received that I began to continue. And I think all of those steps have propelled me to different initiatives, the book, the podcast, the various aspects that are there in order to try and spread the message. And so I'm so blessed to be a part of this big community now where the message is still resonating. But when we look at the amount of individuals inside the United States, we're very small. The message is not
Yes.
pervasive.
No,
People
it's not.
still don't know. I was literally at an event this past week, and I'll tell you, people were not aware of the power of nutrition as I'm sitting talking. And what's interesting is now people throw around all these terms, but they don't have a sense of the term. And I said, forget about the terms. Don't tell me about if you're vegetarian or you're vegan or this. Tell me what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you eat. And when you start to break down what individuals eat, you recognize that there is a lack of knowledge and understanding about the power of the fork, the power of the plate, of what they put on there for transforming their life, their mental, their physical well-being, and their longevity. And so it was empowering, and it encourages me that there is so much work that we have to do, right? Because when you think about this, I'm preparing for a talk, and the talk began on longevity, was the reason, the purpose. And as I looked at longevity, and I'm going through my selfish principles in my mind, and I'm thinking through, and all of a sudden I hear about a close friend who passed away of ovarian cancer.
I'm sorry.
Shockingly, just rapid decline. And I realized that longevity is fleeting. We're not going to achieve longevity to live forever. Ponce de Leon was searching for it. We've all been searching for it. The issue is what's going to be left is your purpose, what you do in this life. The things that you do, how you impact people, how you make them feel, that domino effect that leads to transformation throughout generations. And so that's what I realized. Living a life of purpose is important. And that's really what I talk about in the book, Selfish, is that you do these things not just so we can look good and I can beat Daphne doing some pull-ups. I can't, y'all. I cannot beat her. I know I can't, right? It's not for that. But the question is, what are we doing it for?
Yeah.
Right? What are we doing this for? And it's for the next generation. It's to improve. And so that way we have this stepwise pyramid of improving our state of health. So everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of health and happiness. That's the goal.
Columbus, you're correct. We talk a lot about longevity, and we all would love to live forever, but I don't think we tell people how to live now.
Yes.
Which brings me back to your book, which is, I do think you're trying to tell people how to live in the present. How do you optimize where you are today so that maybe you have a chance at longevity?
Yeah.
If there were one or two things, I know you talked about this book as an opportunity to be that guide.
Yeah.
But for people who read it, what do you want them to take away? What should be the message? My copy's tattered. I've taken notes. I've highlighted it. But just for anyone in the community who's listening, if they pick up Selfish and when they close that cover of the last page, what do you want them to feel or know in terms of their next steps?
I think the first thing I want everyone to know is that you're worth it, right? And that sounds so cliche, sounds like you're trying to be inspirational. But the reality of it is that we do things so often for others in our life or how we're perceived, but for doing it truly for ourselves, that you're actually worth receiving this. You deserve this thing called health. And that the concepts of selfish, of getting spiritual, whether or not that's taking time for meditation or prayer, walking in nature, deep breathing, that means that you're having moments of focus, that you're actually saying, I'm going to step aside and I'm going to schedule time for myself to be reflective, to be recharged. That when that every little bit matters. That we think so often, I have 50 pounds to lose. I need to do 50 push-ups. How about one?
Exactly.
How about taking that first step? Let's focus on the process that's there. And I'll tell you, I have to do that on a repeated basis. I really do. I'll sit there and I'll say, it's just like, so I was sharing with you earlier, it's like I injured myself working out. And so it's easy to say, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to stop. Well, what can you do, Columbus?
Yes.
What can you do?
It doesn't mean you can't move.
Exactly. It does not mean I have to stop everything.
Correct.
And I'm going to wait for that magical Monday. Who starts something on a Sunday or a Saturday, right? Right?
Today is the day.
Yeah, start today. Start yesterday. You had a misstep with what you ate. How about the next meal? Let's do better.
Yeah.
And So that's what I want folks to know is that you're worth it and that little things add up to an awful lot in your transformation of health and wellness for you to kind of live the life of purpose that you want.
And I see that a lot. I mean, I work with a lot of women in the Vegan
Yes.
Superhero Academy, and understanding that you're worth it, but more importantly, that you have to invest in yourself,
Yes.
whether it's 5 minutes to do that reflection or meditation,
Yes.
but you can't give back if you don't have it to give.
That's right.
So understanding that you are worth, health is, you are worth the investment you make to be healthy.
Yes.
So talking about health, I want to ask you about healthcare.
Yes.
Because I've left the traditional healthcare system. I did not see that I was making a difference in a tangible way.
Yeah.
What scares you most about the future of healthcare? And I'm putting that in air quotes because I don't feel that what we do today is necessarily delivering health.
Yeah.
And then how do you see yourself playing a role in redirecting that future so that we're not focused on putting a Band-Aid on an ill person, but that we're teaching them how to be a healthy person?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I've had those thoughts a lot. And I would probably say apathy is my greatest fear on the part of providers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you enter into med school with a desire to do good. You're tainted as you start to go through
Mm-hmm.
training.
Yeah.
You become a little bitter, a little biased, a little bit, jaded. And you come out slightly hopeful, ready to make a mark. And then I think it quickly reverts back into those same feelings. And I think that the passion and purpose leave folks. And that's why many who've engaged in lifestyle, all of a sudden they have a reaffirmation of their purpose as they come back in.
I agree.
But I'm so concerned about the lack of the presence of apathy on the part of providers of seeing patients. And you're taught in part to do this as a physician, that you have to somewhat in part be disconnected so you're able to perform.
Mm-hmm.
But that disconnection, lack of communication, lack of engaging, we've lost the art of medicine, of true healing, which is being able to connect with individuals with really what their concerns are. And so we understand that the biggest bulk of concerns that people are presenting with are some form of stress that leads to a multitude of illnesses. Could be financial, could be relationship, it could be any type of situation that's a stressor that's there that manifests itself amidst trauma and actual organic types of disease states. And so, but as providers, as physicians, as alleged healers, we ignore it because we don't communicate, because we put up a shield and we are just speaking to patients in terms of pathology.
Agreed.
As opposed to a complete holistic approach. That scares me because as we move more and we see it and we now continue this process of a reductionist model in terms of our delivery of care that I only see increasing because we're becoming more specialized.
Mm-hmm.
No longer are there, take cardiology. General cardiologist, I can look across and diagnose you based off your neck pulsations and everything else. Now we have imaging doctors.
Right.
We have congenital. We have interventional cardiologists. We have structural interventionalists. We have electrophysiologists. You have all these areas that we say, oh, that's not my job. That's theirs. Go back and see that doctor. We're working in these small microcosms that don't allow the patient to be treated as a holistic being. And now this is in many instances, not all, our primary care are just simply shuffling off to the different entities.
Yep.
And the partitioning care. And I see this as now we're even going to propagate the sick care more because we're ignoring the complete person and what the real issues are that are there. That's the greatest fear that I have.
So what do we do about it? That's probably a whole podcast. I mean, you are doing things today. What you're doing, your education, your speaking, partnering with Plantrition Project, trying to get out into communities, writing your first book. And I said first because I expect more. But how, if there are healthcare providers listening, and that's across the spectrum, whether it's physicians, nurse practitioners, PAs. How do we start to reconnect? I can't do it in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, trying to, and I still have a little bit of PTSD, knowing you walk into a room and someone tells you something and you're just like, I don't have time to talk about this. But that one thing is probably opening up the scab on many things that could help heal them in so many different ways. But how do we change that without changing our reimbursement system, without changing how we work as physicians and providers?
I have thought about this to a small degree, and I think that we have to take so in cardiology, we have what's called the heart team, allegedly, right? So where you have your primary care doctor, you have your cardiologist, interventional cardiologist, surgeon, that we come together and collectively work together. I believe that we need to have a form of a team and or cardiac rehab for every specialty, for every entity that's there, where I have a dietitian, I have an exercise physiologist or a physical therapist. I have a social worker that's there working to this patient, bringing it inside of our endocrinology, dealing with hormones, dealing with diabetes, bringing it over to our menopausal clinics that are there, that we bring it over inside of our cancer clinics, that when we begin to take this holistic approach and we have these pods that are there, you're going to come up and we're not putting the burden on one individual. Yeah. We're saying that, listen, we're having 4 legs. My wife loves this analogy for our nonprofit, that you have a leg here, leg here, in the tabletop. If we have everyone holding it, it's easy to carry.
Correct.
So if we can have each component of health that's there, our social worker, our dietitian, our physical therapist, working in conjunction with the provider, and that there is an area of communication that's there that every patient has access to, so we're addressing their needs. That is still going to be a major overhaul in our system, because our system, we shun an eye on looking at the entirety of a patient.
We do. And
we say, well, we're just only going to take care of the medicinal portion, the pharmaceutical portion of the actual procedure, but we'll let you walk out and you're a diabetic with diabetic foot with no shoes and go out and come back in. But when you get gangrene, we'll take care of you.
Correct.
That's going to be exponentially more expensive,
the wrong
right?
Thing to
so,
do.
And I understand that that's a loaded conversation itself, and it's a politically charged conversation. But on the front lines, we see this literally happens on a regular basis. So I do believe that is one version that might be an avenue to provide care without completely overhauling the time and the reimbursement and so forth. Reimbursement will have to shift a bit, but I believe it's important. We understand in each of these fields, there's robust evidence that tells us about the power of all those things, of nutrition, of exercise, of stress reduction, of dealing with social components, of social connectivity inside of cancer, oncology, inside of all these areas that are there, of maternal health.
Oh, yeah. That's a big
maternal
one.
Infant mortality. Imagine you're pregnant, you come in, here's your team. We know the power of movement, of exercise, of resistance training. We know the power of diabetes during that time and hypertension, and being able to really address these. That's powerful. That's health. That's wellness overall. It's looking at the complete picture of individuals as a team.
As a team, yes.
As a team.
And that's what we talk about a lot, that we being, the coaches on the coaching team, we are part of their care team.
Yes.
We engage with their care team, but they need to be the center of your care team.
That's right.
So we also have to empower people, because you can't be, so there still is the issue about who's the quarterback. Maybe it's the PCP, but I still think it has to be the patient.
Yeah.
The patient has to know enough to navigate that team and understand who's calling the plays, who's running the ball.
Yes.
But not everyone is there yet.
Building on that analogy, I agree with you. The patient is the quarterback. The head coach maybe is your PCP. That now I'm bringing in my defensive coach, my special teams coach, that all have a game plan to help deliver. But that quarterback really they hold the burden and the weight of that team be succeeding or not.
Yeah.
And that's the patient, has to be the star of it. I tell patients when I'm in the community, I tell people, I said, you are the CEO of your body. I work for you.
Right.
You can't be afraid to convey your
Exactly.
concerns to me, because guess what? You can say you're fired. Now that may have political connotations too as well, right? But you're fired, whatever it is, because you have to make sure that you are in the business of you.
Yeah.
That means planning.
Yep.
Talk about planning, right? You know, who's going to hold a business without planning? You all do this wonderful event. It can't happen without planning in the details. What's happening here, what time, who's doing this, who's doing that. But we neglect that when it comes to our bodies and our health. Right. What time are you going to exercise? I don't know. What are you going to eat today? I don't know. I'm going to leave it to chance.
Run your body like it's your business.
Run your body like it's a business.
Right.
That's right.
Because you only get one.
That's
as far as we know.
That's it.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a little bit of a tough question. Okay. We're the Vegan Superhero Academy, and we talk a lot about what it means to be a vegan superhero. Would you mind sharing who are two heroes in your life and what do they mean to you?
I'll go with the first hero in my life, I would say, is my mom. I talk about my dad a lot, you know, in terms of this journey. My mom is still here with me. My mom is 89. My mom, her greatest pain, she's doing phenomenal. Most people, when they see her, they're like, can't believe she's 89. Is some orthopedic issues from back pain and so forth. Other than that, she's doing very well. My mom will still treat me as a kid, say, are you well? Are you traveling? Are you getting your sleep? Are you listening to your...
She's always your mom.
She sends me articles to read.
Good
I
mom.
said, Mom, you know, I wrote about that in the book, right? You're not doing it, right? And so my mom has been a pillar of strength in my life. She's been someone who has been there through thick and thin, who really just transcends the idea of selflessness in terms of her being. And so to model yourself after someone who gives so freely of themselves, I think it's powerful. That's powerful. You actually get more by giving than you receive more than you give. And so she's demonstrated that. That's been a huge issue, or I should say a blessing in my life, is having her there in order to kind of manifest that. In terms of additional heroes in my life, you know, I think it's my core family, my wife and my kids. They're my inspiration. My wife centers me. She gives me tough love, literally. So there's a concept that out there, she lives by the concept of commas, not periods. So what do I mean by that? And this didn't originate with me. I heard this from someone, but it represents my wife. But is that, okay, you're a physician. It's not a period. So what? Why can't you be an author, comma, father, comma, athlete, comma, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Why can't you be everything? Right? And so why, if this is what you want, if it's what you want, right, there are no limitations in terms of what you can do. And so the support she's given has been tremendous in terms of my journey in sacrificing really some of her own desires to kind of see my thoughts and dreams fulfilled. And she'll oftentimes tell me, well, whose dream is this? Is it yours or is it mine? Is this someone else's? You have to put the work in. So she's been there completely of support. But even from the other side, I'll tell you as a side, right? You know, probably a little too personal, but I've had the same mattress for about 18 years now. I've been talking about getting a new bed.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time, right? It's time. It's beyond. But you know, I love tech. So I'm looking. I'm not going to call out the particular manufacturer, but you know, I'm looking at this bed. It gets cold. It raises up. I'm like, I'm not spending that kind of money on a bed. So I stay with the same bed. My wife is like, and this is one example of many. She tells me, I got the bed for your birthday. I said, no, we can't. Listen, I'm not going to spend that money. We have kids going to college. I'm doing this and that. I said, no. She's like, you're talking about sleep is important. You need to have it. I bring that up because she fills the gap in. Yeah. She fills the gap in terms of for that. And that's admirable. And that's what pushes me, is to say, you know what? That's when I look at a hero, I look at someone who's sacrificing of themselves I look for the greater good,
Mm-hmm.
for someone who has your interest at heart and others around them to help support them, to uplift them, to push them towards a better state. And so when I look at those two women in my lives, I recognize that they do it in different ways, but both equally powerful. And it's been impactful for me in recognizing that I have to be a better person. I need to be a better man, a better husband, a better son, a better physician, a colleague, a mentor. I need to do more in this limited time that I have on this earth, right? We never know today from tomorrow,
Amen.
right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I want a life of fulfillment. It's the most powerful thing for me. That I want to enjoy these moments here chatting with you in a beautiful environment like this. This is why I do it.
And that's a drop the mic right there.
Yeah.
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 Dr. Batiste, I've tried to cover a lot of ground because they're all topics that are meaningful to me. And I share that passion that you have where if I could go back and change things for people that I've lost,
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't be here today, but they may still be here with me. And that is invaluable.
Yeah.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to share with the community, or just some parting wisdom around? I always like to empower people.
Yeah.
What can you do? So a podcast is great to listen to.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about moderation kills. We've talked about the fact that you need to be the CEO of your body.
Yes.
You have to find ways to look at all of those foundational principles. Look at your nutrition, look at your movement, look at your mindset. Mindset's not one we touched on, but mindset is key.
Yes.
Think about your stress, your sleep, your social connection. What is your environment? How are you? There are just toxins everywhere in our environment, but you can have an impact. What can an everyday person do so that they can have more lifespan, health span, and joy span?
Oh man, you just encapsulated everything right there, with the principles of selfish. And so I'll touch on these principles of selfish and end on something practical and tangible I'd like for everyone to do out there. And so the S in selfish stands for spiritual, as I mentioned, which is the mindset. It's the ability. We talk about spiritual is from the Latin root spiritus, which means breath, breathing. And so the power of just breathing, the inhalation, exhalation, what that does to the body and lowering stress. The exercising belief, as you mentioned, is so powerful. Our mindset is so important, really, in accomplishing goals. And studies have shown that. I speak about how we do testing in medicine against a placebo, which is virtually testing someone's mind, the power of belief. But also physical movement is obviously extremely important. The L for love, forgiveness, gratitude, volunteering, the expressions, the F for food, real food, whole food, plant-rich food, that soul food nourishes the soul, right? The intimacy of relationships, someone that you can be vulnerable around, expose yourself and still be loved, is so important that community is there, whether it's individuals, whether or not it's from pets that can generate that oxytocin. Sleep, rest is powerful, and humor, the joy of life. Even smiling amidst pain.
Yes.
It's so important.
Smile when you run.
Finding some reason that's there that actually lowers your blood pressure when you just smile. That it's hard to think of negative thoughts when you just look up and you smile, and finding something, a glimmer of hope that you have to hold on to is so powerful. But how you do it on a day-by-day basis. I tell everyone, I'm not always selfish every day. No. Some days I'm self, some days I'm elf, some days I'm fish, right? It just depends. I may not be everything. But here's what I want you to do and to remember. We talked about every little bit matters, but I want you to remember a concept I heard from someone else. We all are an amalgamation of different people. So Eric Thomas said this at one point. He said, I want you to put pen to paper. Put pen to paper. Not your iPhone, not your computer.
Get out pen, paper.
Not your iPad. Put pen to paper and begin to write down tangibly what you're going to do today to move towards an improved state of health. I want you to find the least amount of time. I can do 30 seconds. Put 30 seconds down.
That counts.
You're going to park further away and walk in. That you're going to choose. You're going to be very specific. right? Measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based, and what your approach is going to be, that you're going to choose a food that you're going to eat that can be health promoting for your body, that you're going to choose a relationship that you need to nourish, that you need to foster, that you're going to choose to go to bed 5 minutes earlier or take a 5-minute siesta or do something a little bit different, that you're going to choose something that you can smile at. You're going to watch a TV show, a comedian, or guess what? You're just going to choose to smile. This painstaking smile that you're grimacing, and see what begins to transform in your body as you add this to your daily basis. Write that down. Commit to it. Put it somewhere that you can see every single day as a reminder to yourself. Put it on your bathroom mirror. Put it on your refrigerator. Put it on your work monitor that's there that you have, and begin that journey one step at a time towards being a better person for yourself and for everyone else around you.
Dr. Batiste, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So your goal is to put pen to paper and to provide yourself with some accountability.
That's right.
Put it somewhere where you can see it every day, and that will help you. And I think the most important thing you said is it has to be this big.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the big, hairy, audacious goal. 1% better.
That's right.
Do that every day, and small steps lead to big shifts.
That's right.
Dr. Batiste, thank you so much for joining me today. I would love to talk to you for hours, but I appreciate every ounce of wisdom that you've shared with our community. And I hope sometime we'll be able to have you back to talk about your second book. Or just,
no pressure, right?
Just
no
for
pressure.
you to share all the things that you're doing out in the world to help people learn how to be selfish and how to make it applicable no matter where they are in life. And the fact that don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure having connected with you over this past year and all the wonderful things you're doing and what you all are doing here with the Vegan Gym.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Vegan Gym community, I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I enjoyed spending time with Dr. Batiste today. Please let us know if you have any questions. I encourage you, if you haven't already purchased a copy of Selfish, I've actually spent a couple of months taking a read of it. I'm still need to know if this young lady is a real person or not, but you too can understand how to be selfish. So thanks for listening. We care, we love you, and hope to see you again on the next episode. Be well.